She did it in front of everyone. We were at Nate and Jill's backyard cookout. Same crowd as always. Neighbors, Nate's softball buddies, Jill's book club friends, my wife Lila's inner circle of advisors. Music low, burgers smoking, small talk about mortgages and dog hair. Normal Saturday. I was at the grill, tongs in one hand, a paper plate in the other, when Lila's voice cut through the chatter. "Careful, honey," she said loud enough for the patio to turn. "We all know you're not exactly skilled at multitasking." Nate chuckled like he wasn't sure if that was a joke. Jill froze. Lila's friends glanced at each other and smiled in that tight way people do when they enjoy the sting more than the humor. I set the tongs down, watched the smoke drift, and counted to 3. I've been married long enough to recognize a test. You pass it once, or you take that exam forever. "Lila," I said, looking at her, then at the group, "if you want my attention, ask for it. Don't apply for it through the crowd." Nate shifted. Jill looked relieved. One of Lila's friends, Tara, lifted a brow, waiting for me to backpedal. Lila smirked like she'd found a soft spot. "Oh, relax," she answered. "It's banter." "If it's banter, make it even," I replied. "Otherwise, it's just you picking a target." She rolled her eyes and went for her drink. The scene moved on, but a line had been drawn, and we both saw it. If I'd known where it was headed, I would have recorded the whole evening and saved myself a week of wondering whether I was overreacting. Back home that night, dishes clinked in the sink. I wiped the counter while Lila scrolled her phone at the kitchen island like a bored judge. "Let's keep today simple," I opened. "You took a shot at me in front of friends. It wasn't cute. I'm not the guy you perform over." She didn't look up. "You really brought the grill lecture home? Call it what you want. I'm giving you a readout. There's no hierarchy here." "Please," she said, still scrolling. "Everyone jokes. You always take things literally. Marriage is literal. Either there's respect or there isn't." She set the phone down. "So we're doing this? The speech. We're doing boundaries. If you need to feel above me to feel alive, you picked the wrong address." She laughed once. "Look at you, big words." "I have 2 small ones too," I said. "Enough. Stop performing in crowds. If you have feedback about me, give it to me, not to a patio." She folded her arms. "Or what? Or I'd change my availability," I answered. "Starting now." She blinked. "Are you threatening me?" "No. I'm scheduling me." I rinsed the sponge, set it aside, and left the kitchen first. She hates when I end a conversation. Good. I wanted the message framed in action, not in begging. I slept like a brick that night and woke at 5. Gym. Office. Straight lines. When I got back, Lila had left a sticky note on the coffee maker. "Dinner with girls tonight. Don't wait up." A heart at the end, flat, like a stamp. That week, the signs multiplied. She went from cool to distant to absent. Her tone turned from teasing to superior. Small corrections in public, quiet contempt at home. She started getting ready for girls' nights, like they were job interviews. New perfume, attention to detail, late returns. My attempts at real talk got waved off with that glazed smile that says you're on an elevator and she's already stepped out. By Wednesday, I set the first rule, a simple one. I moved our shared calendar entries to my personal. No more automatic syncing. If she wanted to know where I was, she could ask. If I wanted to know where she was, I'd ask. I also opened a separate bank account for my discretionary spending and moved my card to it. Not a siege, just clean lines. On Thursday, I told her I'd be skipping the couples game night at Jill and Nate's. "Go if you want," I said. "I'll be at the shop late." That night she came home around midnight, calm as weather. I was at the dining table with invoices and a sandwich. "You didn't come," she said, dropping her bag. "I told you I wouldn't." "You always come." "New rule," I answered. "I don't show up where I'm the entertainment." She fiddled with a bracelet. "You're being dramatic." "Or deliberate. I can never tell the difference in your mouth." She gave me a long stare, then a shrug. "Okay, have your little stance." "Not little," I said. "It stands perfectly fine." She walked away. The door to the bedroom clicked soft and careful, which is Lila's sound for disapproval. The next night, she tried a softer face. I'd come back from a job site, pickup still dusty, and there she was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, cooking something she knew I liked. A small glass of bourbon sat ready on the counter, my favorite heavy-bottom glass. "I made that skillet chicken," she said without turning. You said you were starving last night. I set my keys in the bowl. Smells good. She plated it and slid the food over. I was a little harsh this week. A little, I agreed. You just get literal, and it makes me push back. But I hear you. Good, I said. I ate. It was excellent. She leaned on the island, watching, warmer than she'd been in weeks. It would have been easy to melt into it, pretend the last few days were a misunderstanding. I thanked her, did the dishes, and then told her I'd be up early for work. That's it? She asked, a faint edge under the sweet. That's dinner. We'll see about the rest, I replied. She pouted, touched my shoulder as I passed, lingered a second too long. I didn't step into it. The next morning, she went back to late nights as if the warm moment had cleared her conscience to continue whatever project she'd started. By Monday, the pattern was obvious and insulting. She left before dinner, returned on a whisper, slept like a stranger, and asked me for nothing. Her phone wore a new code. When I asked what nights she'd be out, she said, I don't report, then gave me a lecture about grown adults not needing permission. It wasn't independence, it was theater. So I parked the speeches and hired a private investigator. I wasn't out to chase shadows. I wanted facts. I made the call from my office, not from my truck, not from the house. I laid it out like a job brief. Schedule, locations, context. The man, his name was Dwyer, asked 3 cold questions and told me he'd be in touch within the week. I paid up front. Then I went to the gym and loaded the bar like work was the only honest thing left. 2 days later, Lila ramped it up. She came home at 2 in the morning and moved around the kitchen like it was a hotel suite. No care for the lights, a humming little tune, that careless swing that says everything is temporary. In the morning, she greeted me with a peck on the cheek and a chipper. Don't wait up tonight either. Big plans. Work? I asked. Something like that. Want company? Her smile was sweet and dismissive at the same time. Not tonight. That's a no. I translated and put my mug in the sink. It wasn't jealousy that drove me that week. Jealousy is a teenage sport. I've got a mortgage, a business, and a spine. This was about respect. Somewhere along the line, she'd decided she was above me. Somewhere along the line, her friends had told her she could treat me like a stool and still keep the table. She'd believe them. That was the insult. Not mystery. Arithmetic. Dwyer called Friday. No small talk. You free, he asked. For the truth? Yep. Swing by, he said. Bring a folder. His office was a second-floor space over a barber shop. He looked like he'd come with the lease. Plain suit, calm eyes. He slid a packet across the desk and tapped the corner. Your wife's schedule is organized, he said. Pattern is consistent. Most meetings are between 7 and 11. Rotating locations, limited overlap. Names. He tapped the packet again. You know them. I opened the folder and met photographs I never asked to see. Lila at a lounge with Tara's husband. Lila at a wine bar with Jill's. Lila in a parking lot with another man I recognized from Wednesday dinners. Not the same man, not even the same type. Different nights, different corners of town, different smiles that all belonged to one project. Dwyer didn't narrate. He didn't need to. Dates and places are logged, he said. Your call how to proceed. How many? I asked, though it didn't matter. He told me. The number was less important than the sequence. Orderly. Rotating. A system. Not a wild mistake. Not a single collapse. A plan. Keep this, he said. Or don't. I looked at the photos and couldn't even feel the usual heat men talk about. I felt cold and awake, like stepping outside in January and realizing you're underdressed and fine with it. What do men usually do? I asked. Half explode, he said. Half get strategic. I'll take door number 2. Get an attorney, he said. Hand off everything. Don't make speeches. Don't give previews. Move your body somewhere else and let paperwork catch up with your position. I thanked him, paid him, and drove to a quiet lot behind a hardware store where I called an attorney a friend recommended. We met that afternoon. He was younger than me, sharp in that cautious way professionals use when they know the stakes. Don't broadcast, he said after I gave him the outline. Don't confront. You telling her before you file will complicate it. Say you have a work trip. Get your head straight. Let me do the part 1 do. I don't want to share a roof another night, I said. I'm not sleeping in a story like this. Then don't, he answered. Pack a bag and rent something short-term. But don't leave permanently. Title stays where it is. Keys stay where they are. Mail stays put. Copy, I said. He slid a list to me. Items to gather, accounts to check, steps to take. I handed him Dwyer's folder and my notes. He took them with the careful hands of a man holding a fuse. 2, maybe 3 weeks, he said. I'll draft and file. In the meantime, you're on a business trip. You're cheerful. You're unavailable. I can do cheerful, I replied. I went home and packed. Not dramatic. Jeans, work boots, tool bag, shirts, shaving kit, laptop. I left my wedding ring on the dresser and took my house key. Then I called Lila. Hey, I said when she picked up, voice pleasant like any weekday. Short notice job out of town. Couple weeks. I'll be in and out to grab mail and gear. Well, she said, that ruins my weekend. You'll survive, I answered. I'll text when I'm back for a minute. Where? Up north, I said, leaving it vague on purpose. She sighed like I'd fouled her schedule. Fine. Do what you need. I always do. I rented a small house in a quiet part of town. Nothing fancy, clean lines, a decent couch, a table fit for cards. I told my foreman I'd be remote for 2 weeks, made sure jobs were delegated, then started living like a man who answered only to integrity and a clock. I slept. I lifted. I ate like a grown-up. The air felt clean because nobody was poisoning it with power plays. On day 3, I called Nate and 2 other friends, Vince and Carl. Real guys, not the type to gossip. I invited them over for a simple night. Pizza, a deck of cards, no spectacle. They came, knocked, looked around the rented place, and raised eyebrows in that male language for, "Is everything all right?" "It is now," I said. "Sit." We ate, we played, and after the first hand I told them straight. Not dramatic. Facts. Dwyer's report. The pattern. The names. The attorney. My plan. Nate went pale and quiet. Vince swore softly, once, into his hand. Carl shook his head like trying to clear water from his ear. "Jill?" Nate asked, barely a voice. "Yeah," I said. "I'm sorry you had to hear it from me, but I'm not letting anyone script me. Check your house. Decide your choices." He stared at the table. "I will." Carl leaned forward. "You good?" "I'm better than good," I said. "I'm done pretending to be something to someone who values her reflection more than a partner." Vince nodded. "You got a couch if you need it." "I'm set," I answered. "I won't live in a hotel version of myself. I'm already out." We played a few more hands. Conversation came in quick bursts. "You gonna tell her?" Carl asked. "When the paperwork is printed," I said. "You sure you don't want to storm in?" Vince asked. "Storms pass," I said. "Paperwork stays." They grinned at that because it sounded like me again. I slept that night like the first night after a fever. The first illusion of change came 2 days later. Lila called me at noon, rare. Voice gentle. "Hey," she said. "I was thinking about you this morning. How's the trip?" "Smooth," I answered. "I miss you," she added. "The bed is cold." "Blankets help," I said. She laughed. "I'm serious. I'm not arguing." "I've been busy, but I shouldn't have been short with you," she went on. "I was a little off. I hate that we've been tense." "You mapped it," I replied. "Tension didn't wander into our yard. You built a patio for it." Silence on the line. "Then, can we reset when you're back?" "We'll see." "I'll make dinner," she said quickly. "We'll open a bottle and talk." "Sure," I answered. "Schedule it on your internal calendar." I hung up and put the phone face down. Sweetness after a week of contempt doesn't smell like change. It smells like repair work on a collapsing strategy. I appreciated the courtesy of the warning. My attorney texted 3 days after that with a simple update. Draft ready by Friday. I told him I'd swing by, sign, and pick up an envelope. I kept moving, lived like a single unit, met the morning without her temperature controlling mine. Nate sent me a short text. "Talk to Jill." "Not good. Thank you." I told him to call if he needed a couch. He wrote back, "Handle your fight first." Friday came. I signed papers in a quiet office with a view of a parking lot. The attorney put copies in a large envelope with tabs. He looked me in the eye. "Go home Monday," he said. "Act normal. Tell her you're back. If she forces the conversation, let it happen. If not, you call it. But do not pre-announce. And don't hand her these until you're ready to end the scene." "Understood," I told him. I'm good at endings. I drove to my rental and sat with the envelope on the table. I called Lila that night and told her I'd be home Monday evening. Finally, she said, relieved. I'll make dinner. I invited a couple of the girls for dessert. They wanted to say hi. Great, I said, pleasant. I love an audience. She didn't catch it. Monday arrived with the calm of a verdict. I cleaned the rental, folded my clothes, put my bag by the door. Before I left, I called Nate. Tonight, he asked. Tonight, I said. Need backup? Not for this part, I answered. But keep your phone open. He said he would. On the drive home, I set my face to neutral. I'd done the screaming in my head days ago. This would be logistics. I texted Lila from the driveway. Here. Her reply came instantly. Come in. The kitchen lights were on bright. Lila sat at the head of the table like she'd studied posture in a magazine. To her right, Jill. To her left, Tara. 2 other regulars down the sides. Coffee cups, plates with crumbs, a tray of something sweet I didn't touch. The air had the stale smell of women who've already decided your verdict. Jill gave me a slow look. Tara posted a judgmental smile. Lila folded her hands and tilted her chin. Sit, she said. I set my bag by the door and pulled out a chair opposite her. I didn't take off my jacket. I didn't hug anyone. I placed the envelope on the table and waited. Lila opened with ceremony. We talked, she announced. We think it's time to end this. It's not working. Tara nodded like a bailiff. Jill held her mug with both hands, waiting for my collapse. We think, I repeated, raising an eyebrow. Big committee. It isn't personal, Tara added, which is what people say when it's entirely personal. It's very personal, I corrected. But go on. I'm curious where this train of thought takes you. Lila inhaled like she owned the oxygen. You're controlling. You don't support my independence. You're rigid. I need a partner who elevates me, not one I have to carry. You feel above me, I translated. She didn't deny it. I've grown. You haven't kept up. Because I don't like being mocked next to a bowl of potato salad, I said. Shocking. Tara leaned in. This is bigger than jokes. I agree, I said and leaned back. I let 3 seconds pass. Before we get cute with language, let me ask a group question. Jill frowned. What question? I looked at each of them. Slowly, deliberately. The way you check a foundation for cracks. Which of you is okay? I asked. With Lila spending her evenings with your husbands? Silence. Not polite silence. The kind that drops heavy and spreads. Eyes snapped to Lila, then to me, then to each other. Tara's face shifted first. Jill went white. The others stiffened. Lila's mouth opened and closed. What are you? Which of you is okay with it? I repeated. Simple question. Tara's jaw tightened. What is this? Evidence, I said, and slid the envelope to the center. I had marked the tabs with names. I turned the envelope so the tabs faced them. Don't, Lila whispered. I kept my eyes on the women, not on her. There's a tab for each of your households. Dates. Locations. I didn't narrate. Somebody else did. Jill reached first, like a person checking a hot stove. She pulled the photos with her name on them and drew a breath through her teeth. Tara grabbed hers, hands shaking hard enough to tap the stack. The other 2 followed, flipping pages in a quiet that sounded like thunder. Lila surged up from her chair. You're disgusting, she said to me. You hired someone to spy on me? You violated. I cut her off with a flat palm. Answer the group question, Lila. Which of them is okay with it? Tara stood slowly. You met my husband on a Tuesday, she said, voice low and dangerous. A Tuesday? Jill's mouth worked and finally found words. You said you were at the gym, she whispered to Lila. You smiled at me on Wednesday and said my hair looked nice. Lila tried to go on offense. He's making this. No, he's not, Tara shot back. These are dates, Lila. Recognizable places. You wore my jacket in this one. Jill pushed back from the table like it might burn her. You used my house to change that night. The kitchen exploded. Not screaming at me. Screaming around me. Words flew with the violence of furniture in a storm. They all turned on Lila, voices rising. Betrayal stacking into a pile heavy enough to crush whatever script she'd rehearsed. I leaned back and watched the show I hadn't ordered but wasn't going to stop. I didn't need to add a line. The facts were doing the work. Lila tried to pivot, hands up. You don't understand, she said, then louder when they didn't hear her. All of you were miserable. You all said. Don't you dare, Tara snapped. Don't you dare drag my complaints into your schedule. Jill pointed a trembling finger. You used me as alibi. The other two whispered at each other, then aimed both sets of eyes at Lila, cold and clear. I stood, calm as weather. While they fought, I walked down the hall, grabbed the luggage from the closet, and began packing Lila's things. Not everything, essentials. Clothes, shoes, toiletries, a few of the items she always insists on having handy. I didn't throw, I folded. I kept the bedroom door open so anyone who could see would. I wanted the truth to travel on its own legs. When you ruin a house, you don't get to live in it. Behind me, the kitchen was a mess of accusations. Tara demanded her phone. Jill cried one of those quiet cries that mean the world just cracked, and she's taking inventory. Lila alternated between pleading and commanding and got nowhere with either. When I rolled the first suitcase down the hall, the noise died a notch. Lila saw me and tried to reframe the scene. "What are you doing?" she asked, voice pitched high like she'd never seen luggage. "Housekeeping," I said. "You can't throw me out." "I'm not throwing," I answered. "I'm setting your path. You can walk it or invent a new one, but it won't be through my door." "You left for 2 weeks," she said. "You abandoned." "I took a business trip," I said, and let the word stick. "You took a hobby." "Those photos don't mean. They mean exactly what they look like," I cut in. "You taught me to take things literally, remember?" Tara found her purse and her keys. Jill took her envelope and walked out without another word. The other two followed, phones already in motion. The kitchen emptied like a theater after the fire alarm. Lila stood alone at the table with the remains of a dessert nobody would eat. I brought the second suitcase to the door and lined it up neat with the first. I took her everyday purse from the hook and put it on top. Next, I grabbed her laptop and power cord, set them gently near the luggage, and opened the front door. She didn't move. She stared at the wood grain of the table like it had answers. "Lila," I said, even not loud. "It's time." She looked up, eyes wet with the shock that arrives when your experiment burns down the lab. "You can't just," she started. "I am," I answered. I picked up the envelope of papers and placed it beside her hand. "These are finalized. You'll see everything is straight. Keep the copies. My attorney has the rest." She swallowed. "You're not even going to try to talk?" "I tried when you still had a marriage to talk about," I said. "You held a jury and forgot to check if the judge had documents." She pulled in a breath. "I made mistakes." "You ran a program," I said. "It's out of service here." She stood slowly, hands flat on the table. "So that's it." "That's it," I replied. "Gather what you want. The rest we'll schedule through email. No phone, no visits, no midnight knocks." "You're cruel," she said, voice small now. "I'm orderly," I answered. "Cruel would be staying and letting you pretend this could be reset with dinner." She looked past me at the suitcases. "Where am I supposed to go?" "You've been resourceful," I said. "Use the same energy." She took 2 steps toward me and stopped when she realized I wasn't going to open my arms or soften anything. The old version of me would have wanted to soothe, to show I was still me. The current version was me without the tolerance for nonsense. "Do you hate me?" she asked. "No," I said. "I don't waste that kind of fuel. I just don't host you." Her face registered the finality. She nodded once, slow, like a teacher acknowledging a grade she didn't agree with but couldn't appeal. She gathered her keys, took the envelope, and walked to the door. I carried the suitcases to the porch and set them down. She paused on the threshold. "You'll regret this," she tried. "I don't do regret," I replied. "I do lessons." I closed the door and locked it. Not a slam, just a click. A small, adult sound that separates 2 lives. The house was quiet in that heavy way of spaces that just survived a storm. I walked back to the kitchen, looked at the scattered plates and the empty chairs, and started cleaning. Not because I'm neat. Because I prefer my world without the fingerprints of people who confuse leadership with stepping on other people's necks. Nate called an hour later. His voice was tired and clear. "You good?" he asked. "Better than good," I said. "How are you?" "I'm at a hotel," he answered. I confronted. "It matches. Thank you for not letting me go blind." "I didn't do anything," I replied. "I just didn't agree to be a prop." "You did something," he said. "If you need anything, you know." "I need a quiet night," I said. "And about a gallon of normal." "Normal's on backorder," he joked weakly. "But we'll get there." We hung up. I slept in my own bed. Alone, and felt like I'd finally stopped paying rent on a lie. The next morning, I changed the house codes, forwarded her mail to a P.O. box my attorney set up for her, and moved her remaining valuables into a labeled bin in the garage. I sent a single email with pickup options and a note that future communication should be in writing only. No theatrics, no gloating. The point of strength is not the volume, it's the clarity. My life clicked into a cleaner gear. I worked. I saw the guys twice a week at the shop, coffee, sawdust, good jokes that punch in both directions. I took my truck to the lake on Sundays and washed the water without someone correcting my posture. I cooked my own dinners and ate them hot. I slept, I lifted, I breathed. Word traveled the way it does. The circle adjusted. Some of Lila's friends reached out with long explanations and soft warnings about how she gets. I didn't respond. There's no point arguing with people who use fog as furniture. The papers went through faster than I expected. Clean filing, no contest. My attorney called to confirm the last step and made one dry joke about my timing. The house stayed with me. The accounts separated cleanly. My business didn't hiccup. Lila didn't try any grand gestures. No flowers, no speeches, no late-night knocks. That told me everything about her motive I needed. She hadn't wanted me. She'd wanted the position. When the position ended, so did her interest in the building. I kept my ring in the top drawer for a month. Then one Saturday, I opened the drawer to grab a screwdriver for a cabinet hinge, looked at the ring, and realized I hadn't thought about it in days. I put it in a small box and slid it into the back of the safe. Not dramatic, just inventory. Nate and I met for lunch a few weeks later. He looked thinner, better, like someone who had stopped carrying something ridiculous on his back. "You know what kills me?" he asked, stirring his water with a straw out of habit. It wasn't chaos. It was a system. Systems can be dismantled, I said. Chaos just keeps you busy. "You ready to get back out there?" he asked, meaning dating without saying it. "Not interested," I said. "I'm busy liking my own company." He grinned. "You always were the least needy man I know." "That used to be a complaint," I shot back. "Now it's my favorite feature." We paid and parted. I went back to the shop and lost myself in honest work where measurements make sense and no one calls you rigid for using a level. Epilogue. Fine. Here it is. Today my world is simple and not small. I live in the house I paid for with hands and hours. The truck out front is clean and runs like it should. My business is steady. On Fridays I host the guys for cards at my table, and the only raised voices are over questionable calls and whether something counts as a straight. Sometimes I take a long drive to nowhere and let the road decide where I turn around. I talk to my family more. I cook better than I used to. There's a woman at my gym who smiles at me like she recognizes the peace in my face. We talk about dogs and deadlifts and leave it there. I'm not in a rush. I'm not a monk. I'm a man who learned that being alone beats being partnered with contempt. As for Lila, I hear what floats back through mutual acquaintances. She slept on a friend's couch for a while, then pinballed through a couple of short-term leases. The friend circle that used to clap for her speeches learned to check their own kitchens. The great project of being above everyone else lost funding. She'll land somewhere. People like her always do. Just not here. If there's a moral, it's short. You can love someone and still tell them to leave your house. You can be steady and still be sharp. If respect goes missing, everything else is decoration. I don't do decoration. I do foundations. And if someone ever lines up their jury at your kitchen table and waits for you to beg, bring documents, not tears. Look each person in the eye. Ask the one question they can't answer. Then open the door and make room for your life.